Sri Vasudevanand Saraswati, Chapter 15. Garudeshwar, the Pilgrim's Peace, Past and Present. As this writing was in progress, the author was inspired to take a trip to Garudeshwar, and his visit was all the more fruitful because of the active encouragement it received from the honorable trustees of the holy estate associated with the name of Swami Sri Vasudevanand Saraswati. Many points pertaining to the history about the place and the great saint Vasudevanand Saraswati, who sanctified it by his stay, were verified and elucidated in the discussions with the body of the trustees, who helped the author immensely with their information and guidance. About 100 years ago, this area of Garudeshwar was a terribly lonely spot where a human visitor was an event and only nature reigned supreme in her quiet grandeur. The mighty Narmada might have flown vigorously in the monsoons, carrying the loving load of her watery tributes to the sea, or she might have leisurely coasted in other season through her vast bed lined with lovely hills of Satpura and dense woods of Shulpaneshwar along the banks. The woods then were so dense and impenetrably dark that even angels might fear to tread. What to say of human being? Garudeshwar itself, which was a tiny hamlet overlooked by a fort on the hillock against it, was dotted by a few countable houses and huts, belonging either to the administrators of the princely state of Rajapipla, of which it was a unit, or the local farmers and priests in charge of the management of the temples of Garudeshwar and Naradeshwar on the banks of Narmada. It was thus populated only by the families which were localized in a sense consisting of a physician, a priest or two, the shopkeepers maintaining some stores for the daily needs of the small populace. A casual pilgrim who appeared once in a few months perhaps brought a fresh breeze of the outside world to this region. Very often, the holy men starting on the trek round the river would stop for some time at the shrine of Garudeshwar before resuming the pilgrimage. About more than 50 years ago, Saint Vasudevanand appeared there one fine evening and occupied a corner in the temple of Naradeshwar. A Gujarati Brahmin, Hira Lal, and a local Maharashtrian priest, Vishnu Soman, knew of his arrival and offered him the customary courtesies and reception. Things were arranged for his camp with all the facilities that they could give in that isolated area far from the haunts of humanity. The saint proved to be a personality of exceptional piety and remarkable religiosity, a person strikingly different from the common stock of visiting sadhus, and the news of his arrival and stay spread far and wide and brought to him a flow of visitors and devotees daily growing in number and arriving like swans of a full lake of waters in the Himalayas. The lovely and secluded grounds were now a news throughout Gujarat. Even today, after 50 years, one experiences with surprise the same ancient tranquility, the holy atmosphere, and the spirituality blessing breezes coming across the Narmada, as one sits on her banks and catches the reminiscent mood, which is imaginatively in tune with the spirit of the ancient days. No doubt, the passage of time and history has ushered a few modern features in the general pattern of the township. Electrification, transport, roads, including a railway track not very far, have encroached upon its seclusion and have drawn it into the daily traffic of the modern world. In the midst of some quiet habitations of the local families, you find some apartments with typically modern boards with letters like Child Welfare Homes, Panchayat Office, Police Thana, Government Rest House, which are all the products more or less of the present administration by the district collector. But the visitor is blind to these familiar modern office boards which are ubiquitous in the present civilization, since his only attraction and longing is the spot of all spots, namely the shrines dedicated to Lord Dattatreya and the holy memorial of our saint. The present management of this sacred estate can be traced to its parent body that came into existence during the last days of the life of our saint. He had wisely framed a corporate trust with precise and clear cut formulations of its duties and aims. He had a band of faithful followers who served him and his sacred cause with religious sincerity, among whom can be named a few extremely devoted souls like Swami Brahmanand, Sri Yoganand, Sri Parsubai Bhatt of Surat, Sri Amritrao Sabnis of Baroda, etc. These persons established a healthy tradition of cooperation and faith in carrying out scrupulously the duties entrusted to them by their master, and they passed the tradition on to their present successors who are equally obedient to the wishes of the master as laid down in the will confirmed by the parent body under the guidance of Gurudev. The aim of the trust is to maintain the spiritual standard in strict conformity with the regulations laid down pertaining to the religious practices to be observed by the devotees who come annually to Garudeshwar to offer their prayers and thanksgiving. The author of this book had a unique experience during his visit to this place when he felt that everything in nature, animate or inanimate, seemed as it were quietly absorbed in the mystic mood of the divine presence at the place. Even the hills away on the banks of Narmada seemed to meditate the mystery. Behold, the very hills are in meditation as described by the Upanishads. The trees whispered it to one another with their leafy murmur. The rocks in the river were alive with it. The crows, the sparrows, and the other birds of their kind, fluttering about and chirping, seemed to be aware of the compulsory silence to be observed on the holy grounds, so that the saint may not be disturbed in his meditations, as it were. An unspeakable calm takes hold of the devout visitor and transfer him into the unearthly regions of the inner spaces of his heart. He feels assured within himself that he is now free from all the ills of life, physical, biological, or spiritual, with the blessings of Sri Vasudevanand, to whom he had come, and sings to himself, "Never an evil can touch the devotee of Lord Vasudev. He is ever free from the fear of disease, age, life, or death." The two shrines, which are built with charming architectural precision and simplicity, dedicated to Lord Dattatreya, the presiding deity of the estate, and to the memorial of our saint, are the centers of the spiritual pilgrimage for those who come from the different quarters of the land with an earnest longing for the purifying darshan of the great saint. An attractive river ghat built by the late Maharani Indira Devi Holkar of Indore, whose marriage episode is referred in the previous videos, leads the pilgrim down to the river flowing 100 feet below the hill of Garudeshwar. A dip in the holy waters of the Narmada flowing below as if in great veneration for the divine saint refreshes the pilgrim after the hazards of his journey to this place, and he is ready for the religious schedule that he is determined to undertake and follow up in his camp at this place. From morning to evening, every hour is spent in a deeply religious activity by him. He attends the early morning mass prayers and goes back to his own private meditation and puja, benefiting the place. He receives the sacred prasad through the holy mass lunch provided for all the visitors at the end of the midday worship and ritual in the temples. The lunch is followed generally by 2 or 3 hours of rest or quiet study of scriptures by the faithful souls. The afternoon brings them all together again for a few minutes of mass prayer in the shrine. The evening worship and arti, the worship with brilliant ghee lights, gives a call for everyone to assemble at the sanctorium. There is a special prayer and singing of psalms for the holy Narmada in the evening. The assembly meets on the steps of the high Holkar Ghat on the bank, and after the round of devotional hymns together, the sacred prasad is distributed to the pilgrims who are present. The evening prayers are the attraction of the visitors who never miss them. The Vespertine ritual of worship helps the devotees to go back to the evening meditations and rest with the mind quiet and serene. In contrast to the natural provisions which might have been available 50 years ago, the pilgrims who go there today find a number of facilities generally expected by a modern traveler. Electricity, water taps, transport, dispensary, etc., which are the most common needs of the modern excursion, are there, of course. For great festivals like the Punyatithi or the holy anniversary of the great departure of the saint, and Datta Jayanti, or the day of commemoration of the incarnation of Lord Dattatreya, a mass of pilgrims gathers there. To feed them with holy prasad, an unostentatious dinner hall with apartments for kitchen and stores is built with a capacity to accommodate a big number of pilgrims. Even this accommodation is found too small and a new annex is added. A regular administrative office has been set up with a view to keep the accounts, maintain the register of the visitors, to reply to the correspondence by post, to supply necessary information, and to provide the publications of books pertaining to the mission of our saint or the books written by him to which reference has been made in the previous videos. All these facilities are meant to meet the curiosity and the needs of the devout and the faithful followers of our saint. The management of the holy estate is efficiently handled by the homogeneous efforts and care of the trustees, who are themselves men of deep religious faith and enlightenment. They are members from different walks of life and have merged with their personalities into the single spirit of the Master. The true followers, as they believe, as did their masters, that they are but mere instruments, while Lord Dattatreya is the prime mover behind the mission. This spirit of humble dedication is the common bond that runs like a silken thread through the family of the devotees at Garudeshwar, which consists of the priests, the clerks, and attendants who run the daily chores on the sacred grounds. Even in the midst of the modern apartments and the environments today at Garudeshwar, one experiences inwardly deep within the ancient and sacred vibrations of the presiding spirit and believes that it is the same holy place where the saint had arrived more than 50 years ago on foot one fine evening, trekking through the darkly dense woods on the banks of Narmada. Although change is the fact of nature everywhere, it is wisely brought about by her, as it was, since nature takes care to retain some of her features to confirm the identity of the original, whether it be a sentient or a non sentient thing. As one fixes his gaze on the distant blue hills of Satpura range, for instance, one is reminded of a poetic sentiment expressed by the Sanskrit poet Bhavabhuti in his drama Uttara Rama Charitram. Rama revisits the forest of Dandaka after a long spell of time for his personal royal mission. He looks around and is amazed at the great change that had taken place in the natural environments and says to himself, "Oh, the wonder! The rivers seem to have changed their courses. For where there were waters before, I now find the sandy beach. Even the ancient density of the woods seem to have undergone a change. I cannot believe I am in the same old forests. Thanks to the hills, however, whose firm ranges assure me to the identity of the spot." These verily are the feelings of the modern pilgrims to Garudeshwar also. The hills of Satpura confirm to us its ancient locale, and we are immediately in a mood to agree with Sri Rangavadut, who sings in the glory of Garudeshwar. My salutations to thee, O Master. By the very holy dust of thy feet, this place became immune to the natural ills of floods, famines, etc., and came to be compared with paradise owing to its abundance of the natural wealth of waters, vegetation, and life. Jai Thembe Swami.